So I'll end on looking at the results in the Village of Ardsley. So again, no surprise, it fits with the county trends. You can see that the Hispanic population was really, one of the biggest drivers of the population growth. But you can see that Ardsley, much like the county, is, more diverse than ever. And the population growth is really thanks to that growth in the population that identify as Hispanic, 2 or more races, Asian, and some other race. You can also see, interestingly enough, that, Ardsley has gained both voting age population and the under 18 population. So you guys got it all. And looking at the growth in housing units, you can see that the change was 82 housing units. There was also a growth in group quarters population, and you can really see that that's the nursing population. There were small declines in the other institutional and other non-institutional populations. So those are my slides, but I'd certainly welcome any questions or comments or discussion.
Well, thank you very much. I do have a couple of questions, actually. I'm going to start with your reference to the American Community Survey, which was something you talked about in the very beginning. That's different than the information that you were just showing us. And it said that they send out 295,000, I forget what the exact term was. Bring it up.
Yeah,
that's not in Westchester County. Is that across the country?
Yeah, I'm sorry. That's nationwide. Yep. So in Ardsley, it could be 1 or it could be 3. The controls at the local level are fairly loose. So it's possible that a whole handful of people in Ardsley could get one in 1 month, and nobody could get one the next month. Yeah.
I just don't understand how that could possibly be significantly significant for income data.
Yep.
Across the country.
So they pool data for a number of years. So especially Ardsley being relatively small, the surveys over a 5-year period are pooled together. So the data that was actually just released covers 2016 to 2020. So if you wanted to look up income data for Ardsley, it would be covering that 5-year period. It would not represent just 2020. It represents surveys collected between 2016 and 2020.
Okay. And also, one of the things that I was very focused on and concerned during the census period was the fact that we have an assisted living facility here in Ardsley, and it's independent living and it's memory care living. So does that fall under the nursing home category or the non-institutional category? I never understood where that actually fell.
Yep, no, it's a great question. So it can be very confusing because, and I actually looked at your Atria facility, and what I believe is the case is that some of the units are counted under nursing and some are counted as regular housing units based on the level of care. So yeah, they'd probably say something like, okay, let's look at what people are receiving here, and the dementia facility provides a level of care that we consider to be a group quarter. It's a nursing facility, whereas the people who are living there in a regular apartment who receive less care, those are counted as regular housing units. It's likely a mix of those. So yeah, and that can get very tricky as far as the gray area between those, because really this is, I think, how these senior facilities are moving toward this sort of continuum of care idea where they have sort of that mix. So to be honest, it's probably worth a revisit how we categorize these, because if you think about it, the categorizations were made decades ago when you had traditional nursing homes and traditional apartment buildings, and the senior living is different than it was decades ago. So that's certainly something that people talk about, clarifying that for sure.
Right. My other question is focused a little bit more on the under 18 statistics that you presented. I think it's very interesting to see the statistics on under 18, but I'd also like to see the statistics of 35 to 50 or over 65, because I think those kinds of numbers and population groups would help municipalities with their planning, overall planning for housing, overall planning for, their rec, their libraries and everything else. So while under 18 is an important statistic, I'd like to see the breakdown in other age groups, particularly the seniors age groups, so that you can think about what kind of services you're going to provide to your seniors.
Yeah, we don't have those numbers yet. So they only released under 18, but we should get those, before the end of this year. And we'll definitely make those available, because everybody wants to see those. Those will be very interesting to look at. Yep.
So why don't they release all the data at the same time? Is it just a logistical?
Yeah. So the what they released in August is the redistricting data, and for the purposes of redistricting, they want to look at the voting age population. So that's why they released that. And they're still working on releasing all the data for those of us who are using this for other things. So they, it's quite an undertaking. And if you really want to get into the weeds of it, the Census Bureau has undertaken something that they call differential privacy. So there's a big debate going on among people in the data user community and the statistical community about preserving people's privacy. And due to the fact that computing technology has gotten to the point where you can run census data through multiple different databases and use census data to reveal people's individual responses more easily than you could in the past, the Census Bureau is very concerned with making sure that the individual responses are not individually identifiable to someone, that people do feel confident that when they respond to the census, that their responses are used for statistics, at a group level, but that people won't be able to tell things about their individual household. So that's one of the challenges that the Census Bureau has faced. I'll tell you, for instance, going back to the 2010 census, if you go down to block level data for blocks that don't have many people, it's possible then to sort of suss out where that data is coming from and what those individual housing unit characteristics are. Mm-hmm. And that's really sort of where the Census Bureau feels uncomfortable with this idea that really we're balancing providing that data and protecting people's privacy. So that's sort of the internal discussions that they are sort of, wrestling with and how to best, protect people's privacy going forward. And that's part of why it takes so long to put everything together.
Are there any census blocks that actually are empty?
Oh yeah, there are census blocks that have no population. I'll tell you, the block geographies actually do change each decade, and the Census Bureau made the blocks a little more generalized for those blocks that don't have population in 2020 to try to work on some of those confidentiality issues. And when you get down to the block level, they actually do swapping, and to be honest, they inject noise at the block level. So the counts, so the demographics of the population at the block level are not they're not real. and yeah, if you really want to get into it at the block level, they're not always 100% real, even though this is a 100% count. But they do use invariants. So for instance, housing units are an invariant. So the housing unit counts are real, but the demographics of the people at the block level, you know, may be like 1% off or something like that.
Interesting. We were talking about census blocks and how that factors into any kind of like public land and things like that the other day. Don't ask me why we were talking about that, but anyhow, that's, that's
no,
something
it's the kind. It's
probably
the kind of
something
stuff
most
I'm
people
talking
don't talk
about every
about.
day. So. No. I do though. So you're in good company.
All right. I'm going to ask the board members if anybody on the board has any questions or.
Well, not really a question. Can you hear me? Am I on? Yes.
Yes.
All right. Not really a question, but the information did make me think that, you know, leaning more towards, you know, part of what we're doing right now with our parks is something that we should really move forward with, only because I did not know that our growth of under 18 population was the highest around. And you know, we all know that the young families are moving in and, you know, with the young kids and everything, but I didn't realize that we made the census top list right there. So it just gave me more ideas on moving forward in the, you know, parks and recreation area too. Something to think about. So thank you for that information.
You must have missed that meeting where I was jumping up and down at our numbers.
I probably wasn't at that one, remember?
Well, we actually had, you know, I mean, we actually were very aggressive in our campaign in getting out information on the census. If you recall,
Yep.
we had a banner that hung across Ashford Avenue for months,
Mhm.
reminding people that the census was out there. Okay, Ted, thank you very much. This was really a very, very thorough and interesting presentation. I'm going to ask you to, is this your phone number and email address? If there's anybody on this meeting tonight and they'd like to reach out to you directly with any questions or comments, rather than opening it up here.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, anyone, you know, give me a call or shoot me an email. You know, I'm here anytime. You know, love to take any questions or comments for sure.
Okay, great. And I'm going to ask anybody that's attending the meeting tonight, if they have any questions or comments, they certainly can put them into the chat and we